Okay, this is Algebra 2, 1.6, Part 2, Absolute Value Inequalities. We just have 3 problems, I think, left to solve, and then you'll be finished with this lesson. So the first thing we need to talk about is the absolute value with an inequality symbol. When we have absolute value and an inequality symbol, you either have an AND statement or you have an OR statement based on which inequality symbol you have. If you have a less than sign, you're going to have an AND statement, and we'll talk about why in just a little bit. If you have a greater than sign, it's going to be OR, and again, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But this is something you need to memorize, so write it down in your notes, memorize that if it's an absolute value bars and then a less than sign, it's an AND. If it's absolute value bars and then a greater than sign, it's an OR. So right now we have the absolute value of x is less than 6. What this means is the distance away from 0, because remember absolute value means distance away from 0, must be less than 6 units away. So if we're going to graph that, we have 0 here, we have positive 6 and we have negative 6, both with open circles in this case, and we want the distance away from 0 to be less than 6. Well, that means all of this would fall into that category. The distance away from 0 has to be less than 6 units away. Anything over here or anything back here would be more than 6 units away. And even right at 6 and negative 6 would not be less than 6 units away. It would be 6 units. So pay attention to your sign. If that was an equal to, less than or equal to, we would fill in the circle because it could be less than or equal to 6. Then let's go to the greater than sign where it says the absolute value of x is greater than 4. This means the distance away from 0 must be greater than 4 units from 0, because the distance, absolute value is the distance away from 0 on the number line. So you have 0, you have negative 4, you have positive 4, and so again open circle in this case. And it says the distance away from 0 must be greater than 4. So this would be greater than 4. And that's why when you have absolute value and inequalities, that's why the less than is and the greater than is or. Because of based on the shading that we've done here. So the first example problem that we're going to do is 4x minus 7. The absolute value of 4x minus 7, is greater than 13. So if you remember back when we just solved absolute values with equal signs, we had to do it both ways. We had to do the positive version of what it equal to, we had to do the negative version. We have to do that same thing here. But remember, if you switch this sign, you also have to switch this sign. So that becomes a less than. This was an absolute value with a greater than. If we go back to this screen, it's absolute value with a greater than sign. So it has to be an OR statement. So you would come down here and you're going to write an OR statement here. And then you're going to solve both of them. So you're going to add 7. So you have 4x is greater than 20. Or you'll add 7. And 4x is less than negative 6. You'll then divide by 4 on all of them. So x is either greater than 5 or x is less than negative 3 over 2. So now let's put this on a number line. So we have the negative 3 over 2, and we have the 5. Open circles at both. It says that our answer could be greater than 5, or it's less than negative 3.2. The next one says 5z, the absolute value of 5z plus 2 is less than or equal to 17. So because it's a less than sign, we know we're going to have the word and here. And you can set this up 2 different ways, and I'll show you how that looks in just a second. So we have 5z plus 2 is less than or equal to 17, and 5z plus 2, and remember you have to switch this to a negative 17, so that means that it must be greater than or equal to negative 17. So that's one way you could set it up and solve it. You could also put the 5z plus 2 in the middle, since we're talking about an and statement, and the negative 17 over here. And if you notice, the bigger end, if you're in elementary school, it would be called the alligator mouth, is pointing to the 5z plus 2. It still has to be pointing towards the alligator mouth still has to be eating the 5z plus 2 no matter which way you have it. And so the arrow must be pointing to the negative 17, and so it is here. Then you could solve it like this. I personally like it this way better because I only have to solve one problem instead of two. Divide by your 5. And then we can graph it because it's an and statement. So we have negative 19 over 5. We'll put that down here in the negative area. Then we have our positive 3. Both have closed circles. And this problem says that z is less than or equal to 3, but greater than or equal to negative 19 over 5, or negative 19 over 5 is less than or equal to to z. And so what's in common would be the middle, since it's in our and statement. Okay, so for our last problem in this section, we're going to do a word problem. And remember, as you read it, underline what's important. Try to pick out the important things. So the first thing it says is Amanda's apartment hunting. Not an important sentence as far as our math problem goes. It says she discovers that the average monthly rent for a 2-bedroom is $600 a month. That's probably pretty important. But the actual price could differ from as much as $225 a month, which means it could go up $225 a month, which is a big difference if you're planning on paying only $600, or it could go down by $225 a month, which would be really good if you're planning on paying $600, so then you have that extra money. It says write and solve an absolute value inequality. So remember back when we did absolute value equations that we had this formula that said x minus c, and then it equaled your range, how much you could fluctuate by. So we're going to do that same thing here. So x minus our middle ground, the number that's in the middle would be our 600, and how much we're fluctuating by is $225 a month. And it says it could fluctuate by as much as $225. Meaning it's not going to fluctuate more than $225, but it could be $225 or less. So we're going to do less than or equal to $225. So then you just solve this. X minus 600 is less than or equal to 225. And it's a less than symbol, so it's going to be an and statement. X minus 600 is greater than or equal to negative 225. We switched the symbol, and we had to switch the sign. So if we added $600, and so we're going to add 600 here. So the amount that we're going to pay the person we're renting from could be as much as $825 and as low as $375. So we're going to write that as $375, and since it's an and statement, we're going to put the x in the middle. Determine your symbol, so this was going to be a less than here. Remember, the bigger end, in this case, this point is at the x, the point is at the 375. It still has to be that way when you write it as an and statement. So this is saying the price that they'll pay, this x, is somewhere greater than 375 or equal to, and less than or equal to 825.